risks associated with repetitive stress injuries in farmers, which can occur from overuse and altered movement patterns. You'll learn practical strategies to prevent these injuries. There'll be a little bit of demonstration, movement exercises, proper warm-up recovery techniques, and intentional strength training considerations. So please welcome Dr. Corey, and we'll just take the room.
That's great. Thank you so much. You guys hear me okay? Yeah, all right. Oh, yeah, it's coming through nice. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Johnny. And I do want to thank Yvette, Dr. Yvette as well. I've known her for a long time now. She's a wonderful person. She is bursting with her ability to just care for other people and help other people. So thank you. So I'm going to really quickly introduce myself again, mostly because I want to lead up to the picture that he was alluding to. But here's essentially what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a little bit of a talk on green exercise and what that means and what kind of benefits that has. We're going to talk about what repetitive stress injuries are. And, you know, if you've worked on a farm or worked in agriculture, you might have found yourself feeling some of these aches and pains. So I want to talk through what they are, how to recognize them, and what you can do about them. Spoiler alert, one of the more important things is going to be prevention of these kind of things. If we can stop them from ever happening in the first place, that's going to be really positive. And lastly, we're going to talk about how we can practically include some movement and exercise and training throughout your days, whether it be indoor or outdoors, and what those benefits might be. Now, I have the first talk after lunch, which is generally going to be the talk where everyone starts to fall asleep. So I've got some things in place that we can prevent that from happening. So everyone's kind of on their carb low right now, getting a little tired. So what we're going to have to do first is we're going to have to move around a little bit. So this is not by any means required. And I'm cognizant of the fact there are different ability levels in the room. So I've tried to put some modifications in. But if you can move and you're willing to move, then let's try to move around. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little exercise circuit. So a lot of times what's really nice in exercise, especially if you don't want to spend an hour or 2 hours walking on the treadmill or going for a run, if you condense it all into a nice small chunk of time and do some movement consecutively, it's a nice way to pack it in a little bit. So here's what we're going to do. All together, we're going to do 2 rounds. We're going to do 5 times standing up and sitting down out of the chair. Because guess what that is? What does that look like? A squat, and squats are going to be one of my favorite movements of all time. If you cannot do a standing motion, we've got a couple options here for modifications. You could do a chair press up. So if you're in a chair and you have armrests, you can try to pop your butt up out of the chair, often used for pressure relief and things like that. And if not, we can also do some toe touches. So again, if you're in a chair, you could do a bend forward to the toes, come back up. I'm trying to be as widespread as I can. I've realized I might not capture every single ability level, but I'm happy to chat with you after if you want to talk through different modifications. The second movement's going to be a partial sun salutation. So we're going to go way up in the air with the hands. We're going to come out to the side and come back down. Very simple to start. Please don't whack anybody next to you. So if we're going to do some waving of the arms, let's maybe give ourselves a little space. But let's get right into it. If you can move, let's try to move a little bit. In 3, 2, 1, go. We're going to do our sit to stands first. Up and down. Just go right in a row at your own pace. 2, again, if you can't sit or stand, you can do a press up with your hands, or you can touch your toes. Or I should say reach for the floor. I haven't noticed anybody with loss of limb. All right, I want to stop counting. So once you get 5, now we're going 5 sun salutation. Please don't whack anybody, please. That's not what we need. Good, big, broad movements. There we go. Get those shoulders moving. Feel that full stomach, because that's what I feel right now. Once you get to 5, then guess what? That's round 1 done. Now we're going back to the top. 5 more sit to stands. Everybody's heart rate up already? Oh, yeah. Again, if you can't do sit to stands, you can do some toe touches. You can do some chair press ups. Once you get that second round of 5, then we're doing big sun salutation. Say hello to the sun. Or in this case, let's say hello to the ceiling tiles. Nice. All right, look at that. Probably 2 minutes. We got a nice little full body exercise. Got ourselves moving. We're feeling loose. All right, once you're finished, you can sit back down. Nicely done. And there may be more, so we'll have to see. We'll have to see how this goes. So I guess maybe a quick little theme, if we could pull anything, is the nice thing about exercise is it's universally adaptable and universally scalable. So whatever ability level we have, there's some entry point where we can get active, get moving. You know, if you can't move a certain part of your body, we can move other parts of our body, or we can use our own hands to move our legs or something like that. There's always an entry point to be able to move around and get some exercise. So Johnny already kind of said all this. So I work in Cromwell and Madison as a supervisor and a physical therapist. Anybody familiar with Gaylord Hospital? Yeah, okay, some people. So I'll talk really quickly about that. But one of the more fun things that I do is I coach our sled hockey team called the Gaylord Wolfpack. And in 2023, we actually went to St. Louis and we won the national championship. So it's really quite an impressive group of individuals of all different levels of ability, some amputees, some folks with cerebral palsy or brain injury or spina bifida, a variety of different ability levels. But we play ice hockey sitting down on a sled. And it is so much fun. And I told Johnny to not let me talk too long about this because I won't get to anything else. But if you want to chat with me about it after, I'm certainly happy to. So really quickly on Gaylord again. If you're not familiar, Gaylord Hospital is a long-term acute rehab hospital in Wallingford, Connecticut. It's the big kind of 3 units there are spinal cord injury, brain injury, and stroke. But we also get lots of other stuff. We have a lot of trauma, like car accidents, motorcycle accidents. We have post-COVID patients. There's a lot of different types of populations. It's essentially a hospital where people who are going to need a longer-term care plan that's usually weeks to months, and who are going to need a lot of rehab. A lot of folks like me, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. We've also got some satellites, which is where I work. I work in Cromwell and Madison, and my kind of life and my career really is based around orthopedics, as Johnny mentioned. So I've done a board certification in orthopedics. So my life outside of sled hockey is I talk neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, elbow pain, ankle pain, you name it, pain, because that's what a lot of folks with orthopedic complaints will be dealing with. So in the orthopedic space, one of the most powerful tools we have is exercise. So I wanted to talk a little bit about exercise and how it relates to farming and agriculture, as a profession, as a hobby, potentially just as a source of exercise and energy expenditure. So what green exercise is being physically active within a natural environment. So we didn't really do that in here. We were kind of inside, but that's okay. It's still okay to exercise inside. But if we exercise outside in nature with plants and flowers and sun and wind and all of those things, it's shown to have a lot of really kind of interesting and unique benefits. Some of those reducing stress, depression, and blood pressure. So right off the bat, maybe some cognitive and emotional benefits, which is really nice. Improving self-esteem, mood, well-being, enhancing heart rate variability. And right, that's what we're all after if we're trying to exercise. We want to feel better physically and be able to have longevity and move and be active over time. We also want to feel better cognitively, emotionally, and all of those types of things. So green exercise presents a nice opportunity to potentially magnify some of those benefits. And we've been able to kind of find it in a variety of different types of people. So youth and adolescents, adults, disaffected youth, adults with dementia. So they've looked at this in a number of different groups of people. If we have someone exercise indoors versus we have someone exercise outdoors, in nature, are there any benefits to those kind of things? So this is the part where everyone falls asleep as a research talk, but we're going to go through it quick. We're going to get you there. So one little study, which was in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, they were basically looking at adult participation in one of 6 different projects to see what kind of benefits they got. And they were looking at mental well-being was one of their main kind of goals here. So really quickly, here's the 6 projects. So project 1 was conservation, ecotherapy, and craft focus interventions, just for the general public. Project B was community gardening and food growing activities. This population was the general public, but they also had individuals with autism, learning disabilities, mental and physical impairments, homelessness, and substance abuse. Third one was wilderness therapy-based project. Again, a wide kind of variety of participants included there. Low self-esteem and mental well-being, poverty, abusive of ineffective families, substance abuse. So all of these kind of had a net of like general public and then some very specific subcategories. Our third project was wilderness therapy and walking programs. Fourth was community food growing, helping vulnerable groups access nature, reducing carbon footprint, tree planting. And the last one was walking conservation tasks with silent or meditative elements. So basically we had all these participants and all these different kind of projects or activities that they were doing, all slightly a little bit different, but all based in nature and getting physical activity and a sense of purpose in nature. And again, they were looking really at mental well-being. Does doing these things outside, because we know exercise helps, right? Like that's pretty well established at this point. We know exercise is good for cognition, for self-esteem, for our physical abilities, for muscle strength, for flexibility. We wanted to see, does adding this outdoor component, this natural wilderness component actually help? Not important here, but all of these effect sizes here showed an improvement in our mental well-being. And what was kind of nice is the folks who already kind of had a high amount of well-being, so like they already rated pretty high in their well-being score, they saw an improvement, which is good. But the folks who had a low initial score on their well-being score, like they maybe were having some issues, maybe some of the disaffected youth or poverty or things like that, those are the folks who actually got the biggest benefit out of it. Which makes sense. People are already kind of at the top feeling pretty good. They improved, not quite as much as those who were having a more difficult time. They were actually to see a much bigger, steep improvement. And then one more quick little paper here. This one from the Health Psychological Review. So 38 articles. So this was a study where they did kind of a review, systematic review and meta-analysis. Real quick side note on this, if anybody's unfamiliar with research. We do a lot of individual studies where we like look at one treatment or one thing and we say, does this seem like it works? Good, okay, it does or it doesn't. Once we get enough of those, we group them together in like a group of, in this case, 38 articles that are studying similar things, and we look to see across all of these individual studies, is there actually some proof here that these things really work? Because it could be a one-off, it could be maybe inconclusive, not really sure. So what we do is we group them all together and we say, what is the actual net benefit of all these things that we're looking at? They were looking at exercise intensity, how hard do you feel like you were working? So they're looking at some physical measures, like does doing this exercise actually change your heart rate variability, your blood pressure, how hard you feel like you're working? But also things like enjoyment. Does it affect your intention for future exercise, right? Does doing some of these programs actually make you want to exercise in the future? Does it change your perception of the environment, which is really kind of cool, right? Is there this, if I go outside and exercise, does it actually make me feel a little bit more connected and feel a little bit more like I want to care for my environment and be more engaged? What they found here is outdoor exercise appears to feel more enjoyable than indoor exercise when matched for intensity. So again, with all of these things grouped together, they found improvements in both of these things, indoor exercise, outdoor exercise, right? All of those things improved. But what they found is people exercising outdoor appeared to have more enjoyment. And when we matched for intensity, meaning both of these groups kind of exercised as hard as each other, they were able to find a little bit more enjoyment from that outdoor group. So our bullet point there is outdoor exercise is a great way. And if you're someone who works in agriculture, works on a farm, does gardening, is out in nature, you're likely already starting to reap some of those benefits. And it's probably important to note too that it's good to be intentional between what our occupational physical activity is versus maybe our recreational physical activity, right? So if you're someone who, again, is working on a farm or is spending a lot of time gardening, you're maybe doing more occupational physical activity. If you are someone who potentially wants to go out and actually do an exercise program outdoor, that's going to be recreational physical activity. Those are going to be important. It's good to have both of those things. Just because you're physically active at your job you still should have intentional exercise as well. All right, I'm getting too long-winded, so we're going to keep moving here. Real quick on repetitive stress injuries. So if you're someone who's felt these things before, tennis elbow, hip pain, knee pain, things like that, most often it's happening because of overuse. That's by and far the largest reason. Sometimes biomechanics, warm-ups, and what you're going to feel is pain, tingling occasionally, some swelling in an affected area, some numbness occasionally, and some muscle weakness. And I mentioned a few, but common ones are Achilles tendonitis. If you've ever had pain in the back of like your heel bone, rotator cuff tendonitis, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, right? Some pain around the elbows if you're someone who does a lot of gripping. Anyone ever pulled weeds for a few hours and feel a lot of pain in the outside of your elbows? Yep. Patellar tendonitis, which is right in the front of your kneecap. Glute tendonitis in the outside of your hips. So those are the most common repetitive stress injury, or tendon injuries, which is something where your tendons connect muscle to bone. They're starting to tell you, hey, we're getting a little bit aggravated. This is starting to get uncomfortable. We need to address this. Could also have some neurological repetitive stress injuries like carpal tunnel syndrome, if anybody's ever experienced that, numbness of these three fingers here. Cubital tunnel syndrome, these are just some neurological compression syndromes. Medial tibial stress syndrome is shin splints. So we've done some running or a ton of walking and you start to have pain in the front of your shins. So this is not an exclusive list by any means. So our risk factors are going to be overtraining, so doing too much too quickly. Occasionally ergonomics, so our setup in our environment at work and how we're actually completing certain tasks. Range of motion, strength, history of previous injury. I want to make sure I get to prevention. Sorry, I'm going quickly. So preventing these injuries is going to be by far our best way to treat these things. Is let's not get them in the first place. Now, of course, if you've had them, that's okay. But prevention by movement variety and cross training. So I want you to actually be doing different things than you're doing every day. If you're someone who works in, any job really, but in agriculture, if you're someone who works on a farm, you're doing specific tasks every day, those movements look really similar every day, right? We're doing the same kinds of things. Our bodies work in the same kind of ways. The more we can introduce variability throughout our day, different types of movements, different body parts, different shapes of movements, that's going to really go a long way in preventing repetitive stress injuries. Warm-ups and mobility work. I know a lot of people don't think about that in setting of work, but if your work is very physically active, spending a little time to warm up can be valuable. Strength training, load management, we're going to get to in just a minute, as well as equipment considerations. So if you want to take something home, is look at the high stress areas you're going to be using a lot and using a lot of force through. Our spine, right? We need that. We got to be able to bend over, pick things up. We got to be able to carry things. Our knees, we got to be able to kneel down, right? Get down on one knee, get on and off the ground, potentially. We got to be able to squat. We did that, right? Getting in and out of the chair. We need our shoulders, pushing, pulling, lifting overhead, carrying. We need our wrists and hands. Like, these are some of the high stress areas. These are a lot of the areas that become painful most often. Load management. So with load management, we're looking to say, how much am I doing in this short period of time versus how much have I done over the last 3 months, right? This is your weekend warrior syndrome. This is, okay, I was inside all winter not doing that much. And then all of a sudden I had a nice day and I went out and I just went crazy in the garden. I just started pulling weeds and doing all this stuff. We went from this activity level here to this very, very quickly, right? So managing our load and how much that's changing on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis is going to be a huge indicator of how likely we are potentially to get stress injuries. Utilizing leverage. So short levers are easier, if that makes sense, right? If I'm lifting something, I don't want to lift it out here. That's going to be really, really hard to do. If I can lift it in nice and tight, that's going to be easier. Same thing if I'm lifting from the floor, right? If I'm pulling from out here, that's hard. If I'm pulling from very close to me, that's a lot easier. Less stress, less repetition. Another quick example of movement variety, right? If I'm a baseball player, and this is all I do. This is all I do for 12 months. I just keep throwing, keep throwing, keep throwing. My body doesn't experience any other types of patterns, right? It's the same example. How much load are we doing in one specific development, one specific position, and then what can I do? 5 minutes, okay. So purpose here is agricultural tasks tend to be familiar to you. They tend to be things you're doing very frequently. We need to start to break that up and start to do different types of movement. What specifically? There's a million things, right? I can't give you a specific list of do all of these things. I can tell you which areas to pay attention to, but if you'd like me to, talk out a specific injury you had or some specific examples, because again, our ability levels are all over the map, then I'm certainly happy to do that. All right, we've only got a few minutes left. Before we trudge on, any questions? No questions. Anybody want to do any more squats? Or sun salutations? Shout out questions if you have them, because I'm just going to push on for my last 4. Hit me.
No, it's kind of long-winded and I can wait till the end. It's not quite in line with 100% this, but I think you would know the answer, that's all.
Okay, you want to chat after?
Yes, I would, because
Yeah.
I suffered a really bad event, and so I wanted to do some healing, and so I was looking into fasting to do cellular autophagy. I
Okay.
heard that exercise actually stimulates that quite rapidly, and I wanted to know if that was true, because part of healing and growing is also what you're doing, exercising. So it all kind of circles around
Yes.
that. I just want to know.
I am going to give a longer-winded answer to that, so let's touch on that afterwards. No,
Okay, cool. No,
you're
no.
right on the mark there,
I
for
just
sure.
wanted to-
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yes. So yes, it is going to help. Is my short answer. Did you have a question too?
Yes, can you give an example for individuals that are habitual of what a warm-up would look like before going to a farming activity?
For individuals that are what? I'm sorry. Say that first part
Can
again.
you give an example of what a warm-up would look like?
Oh, certainly.
So
All right.
getting ready to go plan a 50 plan. What does that warm-up look like?
So just like our little warm-up we did earlier today, right? It doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be a lot. The intention of warming up is actually just physically to warm up, right? If we get our heart pumping, our muscles get some blood flow to them, we're going to get warmer. Our body temperature is going to go slightly up. So if you're going to be doing something that's going to involve a lot of bending over and picking things up, some cherry pickers might be a nice option. If you've ever heard of cherry pickers, it's just a few touches on the floor. All right, just getting my back warmed up, getting my shoulders warmed up. If you're going to be doing a lot of overhead tasks, doing some sun salutations, right? Look at the movement you're going to be doing and start to do some repetitions there. It doesn't have to be heavy, it doesn't have to be hard. If you're going to be doing some gripping, pulling weeds kind of tasks, you can do some hand presses or some hand pulls. You can take some tennis balls, do some squeezing. If you have any equipment at home, you can do jumping jacks. You know what I mean? Like, take the body part you're going to be using that day. If you're going to be getting on and off the ground, right? I'm going to be using my knees a lot. Let's maybe do a couple sit to stands first. It doesn't have to be extraordinarily specific, but the more specific you can make it, the better. If I know my lower body's going to be really active today, let's do some lower body movements, right? Because my whole purpose is literally just to warm up an area, get blood flow to an area, get it to start to say, hey, guess what? My body's going to be moving today. Guess what? I'm calling on you, legs, like we're using legs today. Or I'm calling on you, arms and hands. That's what we're going to use today. Any other questions? Hit me.
So I know you mentioned carpal tunnel. So I'm getting to that age where I'm starting to get some arthritis in my hands.
Okay.
And so I really don't want to use things. It's not bad, but I don't want to use anything. What can I do to take care before, during, after?
Good. So I did have a slide on that. I told you. Yvette, did I tell you I was going to go over? I told you I was going to go over today. I'm sorry. You can kick me off. Play the music whenever you need to. Exercise is really, really positive for arthritis in general. We think of arthritis, we meaning medical community, as this wear and tear kind of thing. And maybe to a certain degree that can be the case. But what arthritis is a systemic change in what's happening in our joints. But exercise is beneficial. Exercise is protective for arthritis. So to think of it as wear and tear, you feel like, oh, my joints are just going to fall apart if I'm starting to add in exercise. That's not the case. In arthritis, aquatic exercises could be nice, potentially doing exercises in the pool. But even just doing some light exercise just to get some motion is beneficial. We know, again, here's just a list, you can kind of read them, but there are so many health benefits to our joints, to our muscles, to our synovial fluid in our joints with movement and exercise. Arthritis responds really, really well. So I really spend a lot of time talking about like, don't harp on this wear and tear narrative because it's disabling innately that like I can't move because I have joint degeneration or something like that. Joint degeneration makes you feel like everything's falling apart, right? Like everything's just disintegrating into dust. That's absolutely not what's happening in, let's say, degenerative joint disease or knee arthritis. It's inflammation in the joint, but it responds really positively to movement and exercise. So any of the motions I made you guys do today would be great starts in some of those things. Carpal tunnel is a little more specific. I could certainly chat with you after.
That's excellent. We have one more question, and this will probably be our final question.
Yep.
You were saying how do you warm up without stressing your body too much?
Without stressing your body too much? Good question. So the intention, again, of a warm-up is to be short duration, so not very long, and it should be relatively less intense than the activity you're doing. So let's say if I was going to spend 2 hours baling hay or something like that, that's a fairly intense activity, a lot of motion going on. So we want to keep the intensity of the warm-up lower. You shouldn't feel like you're working very hard. Your heart shouldn't feel like it's beating very hard. So I guess the easy answer here is we use a 1 to 10 scale on how intense an activity feels. It's called the rate of perceived exertion. How hard do you feel like you're working? 10 out of 10 is like, I could not do that again at all. I couldn't lift that one more time. That's 10 out of 10. 0 out of 10 is obviously not doing anything. So if you're baling hay and working at, let's say that's an 8 or 9 out of 10, pretty hard activity, your warm-up should be in like the 3 to 4 range. Should be pretty low intensity. It's just creating motion as easily and as stress-free as you can. The 1 to 10 scale is a good way to think about it, really, of how intense something is. It's simple, but it works.